Welcome, everybody. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. In this episode, I'm going on a rant, and it is a strategic and deliberate rant about all of the forces that are coming to you. And if you are not an educated borrower, if you're not a savvy borrower, if you're not a strategic borrower, the types of credit products that are coming out here are disguised to not even look like credit products, and they're going to pull the rug out from underneath us and cause us more financial harm. In a second, we'll do a deep dive into what's going on out there and how we can fix it. I'll be right back.
In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome back, everybody. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Get Fundable podcast and your guide to the Get Fundable universe. So, like we said in the intro, there's a sad state of affairs going on right now when it comes to consumerism, borrower, lack of borrower finesse and sophistication. And because of that, we're getting predated upon. That's a fancy word for predators. We're susceptible to predators. You guys, today we're talking about how do we train ourselves? How do we become aware of what is traditional consumerism that many of us have been raised with and has been amplified and exacerbated by COVID and our kind of sequestering we've gone through over the last year and a half. So let's get started on this. First of all, when I say consumerism, I'm saying debt spending. Because if there was no debt whatsoever and we all had to live off of our income, then most of us would be a little more careful about how we spend. Wouldn't be necessarily as much impulse buying because there isn't a way to say, oh, I'll pay for it next week or next month. When I was growing up, there was a cartoon, Popeye the Sailor Man, and one of the characters would always say, "Excuse me, sir, can I purchase a burger today, which I'll be glad to pay for Tuesday?" And so that whole buy now, pay later has been ingrained into us for generations. Now, I come from a baby boomer generation, and the folks our parents and grandparents who fought in the two world wars, depression children, they had a really strict policy about debt spending. But as we moved into more prosperous times, post-war, the 60s and the 70s, and expansion of American influence at home and abroad, everything became more and more and more debt spending, both macro, the government, states and local states and federal governments, and individually. Now, I can't tell you which came first, the chicken or the egg. Our consumer spending, do we set the pace for it? And so our city, state, and federal governments all spend in kind? Or does it start at the top, and wherever there's a great deal of spending in the macro world, in the national economy, does that give us permission as consumers to get more credit, raise our limits, raise our balances on those new limits, and spend? Okay, so today I've spoken in little bits and pieces over the era of COVID, but today I want to focus specifically I mean, literally dial in tightly what it means to be a consumer borrower versus a strategic borrower. And and there's a way to borrow money that strategically improves your standard of living and quality of life without unnecessary debt. Now, one of my the fellow preachers in this space, David Ramsey, Dave is all about no debt whatsoever for any reason. But also, it takes so much longer to purchase a car or purchase a house or be able to get some of the larger quality of life items that we would want as our incomes improve and as our job placement and jobs grow and et cetera. So in these, we want to make sure that we are conscious about our debt spending. Now, I have a very simple definition. Very simple definition. If I can borrow money to save money or make money, then I look on a spreadsheet to compare the returns, because you can borrow money to save money and you can borrow money to earn money or leverage other people's money for financial growth. If I'm buying it to get it, to get something that maybe I don't even need or require for a higher quality of life, then is that really strategic borrowing? Is that strategic debt? Now, then comes COVID a year and a half ago. COVID steps in and two things happen. Nationally, we start spending stimulus packages. We start spending to keep the economy going. I'm not weighing in on whether that's good thing, bad thing. I'm saying that there was more money put into the system to keep the economy going while unemployment skyrocketed, while tenants were mortgage and rent moratoriums were going on, even auto payments and credit card payments moratoriums are going on because of this shutdown, close down. 20% of hospitality industry literally just closes overnight, right? Then that's happened nationally, and then we kind of closed down as well. Now, I did report last spring that there was a significant people were using stimulus packages, so stimulus checks, savings to get out of debt, and so there was this massive movement to pay down current debt. Well, that lasted for a quarter and a half, and is now blown up again, where we hit new highs. I reported in one of our Facebook lives where we just hit $15 trillion in consumer debt, a new high, a brand new high. 15 trillion in consumer debt. Now, consumer debt also includes mortgages, so there is a portion of that, but our credit card spending is going out of control. Now, to exacerbate or augment this problem, we've also COVID brought us all indoors. We're not going out to eat. We're not going to the movies. We're not doing other things. So we start spending on Netflix or other packages, where we start ordering from Amazon or other online providers to help us nest or improve what's going on in our homes. But many of us are Uber eating and door dashing and spend. I added 30 pounds because I just started eating at home instead of going to the grocery store, buying food and making it myself. So there's this massive amount of debt being incurred because we want to improve our lives. Now, because we're not out in the world, we're not socializing as much. Our social feedback has come, especially for our younger generations, millennials, Gen Zs, etc. There's been a huge uptick in social use. The Instagrams and the Facebooks and the TikToks and everything. TikTok blew up in COVID era alone. So everybody is looking at the world from their phone instead of out in the three-dimensional world. And so as a result, our sense of self, our feedback, our self-worth is based on what we see others doing on their social media. There's been a dramatic increase in purchasing of the things that the influencers are promoting, because I want self-esteem, I want a better self-worth, I want to create more, I want to be one of the cool kids, and that's 35 and 45 and 55-year olds, right? But I want to be one of the cool kids. And so we spend money less deliberately, or our values have shifted and we're buying to fulfill those values. Because guys, I've preached this over and over and over again. Happiness, we feel happy when our values are fulfilled. If we change our values, then our happiness framework changes as well. You are happy when you are fulfilling your values. If you love the feeling of working out, and you love the results on your body and your health for working out, and you don't work out, it's likely you're not as happy. And sometimes you can even get depressed. But when you are working out, you're fulfilling your values of looking good, feeling good, eating well, and doing exercising. And as a result, the value's fulfilled and you feel happy. We shift that value to online personalities, online influencers, and now we're only happy if we look like they look, if we are doing what they are doing. And as a result, our values shift, and to be happy, we have to fulfill those values. All right. So one of the things that has happened in COVID is that we all started sheltering in place. We started rearranging what our lives look like, both our families, as individuals, as couples, as communities, and then marketers started marketing to us at home. I I used to do monthly events around the country, and now here we are. I do Zoom events. So I'm in my tribe is literally in my studio with me on Zoom, like we are now, on Facebook, etc. So we everybody just started, the portal to the real world was through the computer and through our phones and through our other screens, right? So now let's bracket that, hold that to the side just for a second. Now let's look at the Gen Z, the millennials, and even the latter end of the baby boomers. Financial literacy sucks in this country. Financial literacy in high school, it's usually at most, right? You have 4 years with 2 to 3 semesters as part of your year, depending on how your school works. One of those semesters on 1 year is about financial literacy, when that is the thing that actually is going to help us not just survive but thrive in the world, right? And financial literacy is, what is a checking account, what is a savings account, and and what's interesting is that every financial literacy course I have looked at is the equivalent of do not get into debt. Credit cards are bad. Don't use credit cards. Only use a debit card. And everything is anti-debt. Now, that would be fine if we were in a completely different type of society. And some 30 to 40% of those students are going to end up in a business of their own at some point in their future lives. 30 to 40% are going to want to have some entrepreneurial endeavor, and it's probably higher now. Those are the numbers of the last 5 to 10 years. It's higher now because everybody, we're all used to working from home now, many of us, and so children are seeing their parents work from home, but aunts and uncles are working from home, and the nephews and nieces all see that life can work from home, and they want to know, hey, I want to grow my standard of living and quality of life. And that can be done from home, usually through some entrepreneurial endeavor. But now they have no education. They don't know how to leverage money. So now you got to end up going to one of these wealth strategy classes, the real estate investing, note buying, online businesses. There's dozens of them out there, but those individuals usually teach myths and misrepresent the credit and funding truth to support their own agenda. There isn't an objective borrower education out there until now. And that's why you're on this podcast. And whether this is your first one or you've binged all 150 before it, the reason why we're here is because we must know what it takes to be a strategic borrower, because it is unlikely that we can Dave Ramsey our way to wealth and high level finances, because that is about protecting yourself from debt rather than learning what debt truly is, what strategic debt is, what foolish consumer debt is, know how to separate the two, and then create a life that leverages other people's money. Wow. Now, to add insult to injury, because the consumers are now just like we're in a frenzy of borrowing. And now the most recent predatory type of loans are what are called buy now, pay later. Now, they've been around for decades. You used to be able to go to a furniture store and they say, hey, 90 days, same as cash. Buy it now, engage a contract, but if you pay it no interest, you pay it off in 90 days. Some furniture stores went 6 months. Some went as far as a year. Waterbed stores used to go for a full year. We'll carry you for a year interest-free. You pay it off, no interest to you. Well, now they're getting into buy now, pay later. BNPL is what it's being known in all in the media, where banks are now putting buy now, pay later software as part of their software offering in their online portals for clients and their customers. What happens is you can now go up to so many places, everything from Lululemon. It isn't furniture stores anymore. It's Lululemon and Target and straight retail locations, and say, instead of giving them a credit card, it's buy now, pay later, which means that you still have your balances on your credit cards. You're not increasing those, but you get up to 4 to 6 months of payments where there's no interest. This would be great if every borrower in America knew the difference between consumer debt and strategic debt, but we don't. And so we don't have a massive body of educated borrowers. So buy now, pay later. Think of it this way. When you put it on a credit card, yeah, you're paying a whole grip of interest. 96% of your payment is interest. 96% of every payment is interest. But it's a small, affordable one that we can tell ourselves that we're going to pay this over time, 2 or 3 years. $10,000 credit card at 18.5%, 19% interest with the minimum payments can last 10 to 15 years before it's paid off to zero when you make the minimum payments. The problem with buy now, pay later is that if you buy something for $1,000, it's 4 payments of $250 times 4 payments. And so the question is, I can afford $250 because it's interest free. So we're being led to the slaughter by interest free, and we're going to owe $250 a month for 2 months. Some of us just can't straight afford it. But because we've been led to believe, because we've been trained, because the ignorant have been teaching the naive, or the manipulators have been teaching the naive, that they're saying interest free is awesome. Well, where else is this true? People like, yeah, I got a credit card and I can use the credit card interest free, but they don't remember, they weren't taught until here, and you binged it with me, that when you charge up a credit card, you may not be paying interest, but you're ruining your personal credit profile with high balances. Straight up ruining it. But it's interest free. So that's where the lack of awareness is. That's where the lack of education is for the vast majority of borrowers. Everybody who's outside of my tribe thinks that interest free is awesome. So guess what? We are going to end up in interest free. Now, I don't like paying interest at all, but I'm willing to pay interest if they're charging me 5 to 6% and I'm making 15 to 16% or even 8 to 9%. That's arbitrage. That's how the big boys, the big girls make their money. That's smart borrowing. But just to be able to say, oh, it's interest free, 4 payments of $250, and then I am hamstringing, I am tying the noose on my financial capacity to pay. Whew, I guess today's all about the soapbox. Guys, in every possible way, we need to be clear. We need to teach our children. So people ask, where do I find this borrower education? How do I educate my children? How do I become a strategic borrower, not a consumer? How do I become a strategic borrower? Well, if you haven't gotten it already, make sure you get a copy of The New F Word. It's a national bestseller. The New F Word. And the New F Word goes through in 17 chapters and covers the framework of strategic borrowing. What is being measured, how it's being measured, what FICO and lender software count as good and what they count as bad, so that we can start shaping our personal education and not make this fake, not be susceptible to buy now, pay later, not be susceptible to the soul crushing personal credit profile crushing temptations of zero interest on our personal credit profiles. Have at it by doing zero interest on business credit profiles. But to learn all this, Getfundablebook.com, you guys. Getfundablebook.com. And go to, if you want the quintessential strategic borrower education and business borrower education, I mean, it is the summit of all things borrower, a strategic borrower, is go to Getfundablebookcom.com. Getfundablebookcom.com. And then you're going to see the different ticket prices. It's crazy inexpensive. But go read the reviews. There's probably 10 feet. If you're scrolling, there's got to be 10 feet of reviews of people just like you who have gone to this boot camp and said, why wasn't this taught to me in high school? Why wasn't this taught to me in college? Well, it's available now and it will change your life. So I acknowledge this one sounds like a pitch for the boot camp in the book, but guys, borrower education. You got to learn the rules of this game, or you're going to be stuck over here, some new buy now, pay later, and our previous programming is just going to pull the rug out from underneath your finances, and we're going to be more stuck than we were before these programs came out. Banking is changing. These online banks, what are called neobanks, Chase, Wells, Citi, BB&T, PNC, have rules of engagement where we can leverage their money to grow our lives, grow our businesses. Neobanks are coming in and are literally abusing. It's more of the tier 4s. For those of you who've been binging or you've been to the boot camp, it's the tier 4 institutions, the finance companies, the ones that FICO downgrades, FICO hates, lender software hates, but there's just more and more and more banks coming online because they want to give you money, because they hypothecate that money. They actually create the money. For every $1,000 you borrow, they have $100 on the line. And if you want to know more about that, Getfundablebook.com, Getfundablebopodcast.com. And if you want the center of our fundable universe, just Getfundable.com. Guys, if you haven't read the book, read the book. If you haven't been to the boot camp, I'm so just frustrated with predatory banks, lenders, financial institutions who are literally taking advantage of us and introducing new and exciting ways to finance that's literally going to trip us up more and more. I have your back. I want you to have strategic debt. I want you to be a true, powerful business borrower to advance your lives and your goals. Like, love, pass along, review, share, let people know what's going on out there so we can protect our loved ones, protect our associates, and let people know what game is really being played against us. Because guys, unless we up our game, we're going to keep getting dunked on and dunked on and dunked on. We need the all-star education, and right now we're playing pickup ball at the rec center. Please, let's do this together. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast and your guide to the Get Fundable universe. And let's keep this fundability movement going.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit Getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you gotta tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.